Hey everybody, this is Harvey Sluggo Wasserman back for the 249th Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition Zoom call. It is December 1st that we're recording, and we, as usual, have a ton to talk about. We have a new mayor in St. Paul and a great woman activist in Minnesota, in St. Cloud to talk about it. Hedy Tripp is with us. We're going to be joined by Ray McClendon from Georgia in the second hour. And we're going to talk about Georgia is on everybody's mind at this point in time. And the second hour, we're going to talk about, we're going to do a full hour on energy. There's a ton that to be talked about, including the real impacts of Donald Trump's attack on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We have a California governor's race that could turn on that issue. And we're going to do special visitation of the California Solartopia show. But right now, we are starting off with, shall we say, 36. That's a good number, a double high people to start. And I want to visit with my old friend Hedy Tripp from St. Cloud with news of a major, I guess, historic moment in St. Paul. Hedy, I won't steal your thunder. Tell us what has happened in St. Paul, Minnesota.
So, St. Paul, Minnesota has the largest Hmong population in the nation. So, these are Hmong Americans, and they've been celebrating their Hmong New Year yesterday and today. And I want to start with the ICE raid that happened in St. Paul. It was on November 18th. Federal agents raided a industrial paper products manufacturer. But I want to pick out what the mayor-elect, and her name is Cao Lai, her, Hmong American. She said, I quote, she received no advance notice of the operation and spent the morning trying to confirm who was on the ground. You know, she said, the federal agents were wearing gear labeled as police, which is not standard issue for our St. Paul Police Department. When federal agents mislabel themselves, it creates confusion, undermines trust, and raises fundamental questions about who those officers really are. So it's a quote from her on that issue on ICE so we can know where she is at politically. She's progressive. I have met her. I know her cousin very well, but she is what did you have that? Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
uh,
remember we're on the radio, Hedy. So this is HMONG, and they are obviously not Chinese.
right. But they originated in the southern part of China, and there are communities still there, but the majority had been pushed and driven out of China and went to Laos and habited the mountaintops of Laos because the lowland Lao, again, was they had conflicts with the lowland Lao. So that's just a little history. And also, why are the Hmong here? They were recruited by the CIA during the Vietnam War to actually spy and also kill the North Vietnamese along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So there's a lot of history. But again, the largest population of Hmong are in St. Paul. And so having a Hmong American, and especially a woman mayor-elect is amazing. And I'm hoping for good things for St. Paul. Now, that's the twin cities of St. Paul and Minneapolis. Now, Minneapolis has the largest Somali population outside of Somalia. And in St. Cloud, which is about 70 miles north of the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, we have about 5,000 Somali, and they have been receiving just recently, just the last few weeks, some really a lot of hate mail, threats, and the leaders have been extremely concerned. But what I found with the Somalis, since they came to St. Cloud and to Minnesota in the early 2000s, although there are many tribes within the Somali community, they come together when there's a crisis. Um, and they have been organizing. I'm going to a meeting on Wednesday where they're coming out with a press release trying to get a unified voice. So they are amazing organizers. So that's the journey that we are taking right now. And a lot of allies have been, advocating and encouraging things. But the difference here from 2000 to 2025, it is the Somali community that is leading this resistance, this press release, this pushback. Uh,
Amazing. Okay, thank you for that, Hedy Tripp. And I did want to mention also, oh, correct me if I'm wrong, that the election of this woman as mayor of St. Paul has resulted in the first all-female city government in Minnesota. Is that correct?
I think it was an all woman one before her election. Anyway, yes, I was part of some of the forums that was happening, and the women that are on the city council are pretty amazing. Also in St. Cloud, we have our first Somali woman on the city council in St. Cloud. So things are changing.
Well, an all-female government I think St. Paul probably has become the biggest city in the country with an all-female government. I would
Ah,
I would bet on that. But soon probably it will happen in that small town in Oregon that we've been following. But well, that's another story. Thank you for that report, Hedy Tripp. Much appreciated. We now have Ray McClendon with us. Ray is in Georgia, and Ray, you've got a ton to report on. Everybody is curious, of course, about what's going to happen with Marjorie Taylor Greene, and but also can you start with the dropping of the criminal charges against Donald Trump for his attempts during the 2020 election. Can you tell us about that? And then we'll go to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and then we want to talk about the public service issue and vocal.
Well, as should be a surprise to no one, Pete Scandalakis, uh, who took over the case just a couple of weeks ago,
Now,
has
this is the prosecution of Donald Trump for calling the governor and asking him to find 12,000 votes. Is that the case we're talking about here?
yeah. Well, yeah. The bottom line is all the charges that were brought in Georgia now have been completely dismissed based upon the recommendation from Pete Scandalakis, who is the head of the Georgia Prosecutors Council. As background, as I've shared with many of you, uh, Pete Scandalakis is responsible for identifying and appointing prosecutors for select cases in Georgia uh, where there is a problem bringing it before a specific county's district attorney. Uh, because of the situation with Fonnie Willis that we painfully got involved with, she had to be recused from the case and her entire office, which put it in his hands. He was supposed to go and identify another attorney. At the 11th hour, literally the week that he was given the court gave a deadline to name an attorney. He then turned around and said, well, he threw his hands up and said, I can't find anybody, so I'm going to appoint myself.
Now, what is his position, Ray? Pete Scandalakis.
He is the executive director of the Georgia Prosecutors Council. So it's a statutory position in the state that he has that allows him to go into different counties where there are problems where the district attorneys cannot prosecute a case themselves and he appoints attorneys to take on those cases.
Oh my God. So, and then they had Fannie Willis. They set up this whole big hoopla. Can you explain that? What happened there, Ray?
Well, remember this was a sprawling racketeering case that Fannie Willis brought. First of all, it took over a year with a special grand jury to bring these charges, which then went before the Fulton County District Attorney. And it goes back, it started with the famous or infamous call that Trump made to the Secretary of State to find him the exact number of votes that he would need to win Georgia. That's the way the case started. Um, and then it expanded to almost 20 different co-defendants, including Giuliani and some of Trump's other attorneys, as well as some local Republican officials. But there were about 20 of them total that were part of this. During the legal process and leading up to the trial, it came out that Fannie Willis was in a relationship with one of her attorneys on the case, who was a contract attorney. That was used then as the basis to then discredit and ultimately have Fannie Willis recused from the case. When you recuse the district attorney, you have to recuse the entire office. That's what then kicked it into Pete Scandalakis's purview, into his jurisdiction. Now, as I shared with some of you who were on a previous call, we are very familiar with Scandalakis and his predilection, if you will, for supporting the MAGA agenda. Burt Jones, the lieutenant governor, was initially a part of the racketeering case. His case was carved out by not his involvement, potentially being indicted, was carved out by the judge because Burt Jones's attorneys brought up the fact that Fannie Willis had been a part of a fundraiser for Burt Jones's opponent's campaign for lieutenant governor. So she had to be recused from his case, and that kicked it over to Scandalakis. This was when all of this was at the very beginning, some 2.5 years ago. And Scandalakis never did anything in that case. And we ended up going to court. We filed a civil suit, we meaning Communities United for Justice, filed a civil suit in that case to try to compel him to do his job and to identify an attorney in that case. Well, he never did that. He dragged his feet, and essentially the Burt Jones situation went away. Burt Jones is now running for governor.
Oh God.
He is running for governor as we speak. So we
So,
know
th-
who
so
Pete,
now,
we
now
know who Pete
Trump's case is,
Scandalakis is. Yeah, go ahead.
and now Trump's case has gone away. This is a very high profile moment, as I think everybody remembers when it came out that Trump had called the governor and asked for 12,000 votes. And that was obviously prosecutable. And now you're telling us that case has gone away.
It's
That
not
case
go,
is
it's not go
completely.
for accuracy's sake. That was the Secretary of State, not the
You're
governor.
Yeah, it
right.
was the Secretary of State.
Sorry about
Correct.
that. Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
it was the Secretary of State. But there were a number of issues involved, and that's the reason it was a racketeering case. Because remember that there were not only the calls. Mark Meadows actually flew down here, the chief of staff, and he met with different county officials about voting tabulations. There was a rural South Georgia county where the Republican leaders in that county gave access to some Republican MAGA lawyers that were associated with the Trump campaign that gave them improper access to voting machines. So this was a sprawling case that had multiple counts associated with it.
Unbelievable.
Scandalakis now has made all of that go away.
So now it's okay in the American political repertoire for a candidate who happens to be the incumbent president to call a Secretary of State in a state and demand enough votes to win the state. So we'll look forward to that again in 2028. Thank you for that report, Ray McClendon. Do you want to update us now on the situation in
I
Georgia?
see a couple of hands up. I see a
Oh,
couple of
okay.
hands up.
Well, the next we want to talk about is how Marjorie Taylor Greene's resignation might have impacted Georgia. I haven't seen any reporting on that anywhere, but we do have a couple of hands. Myla Reeson and then Tammy Wilson. Myla?
I just wanted to remind listeners that Donald Trump was not the only person who was charged in this RICO racketeering case. There were a number of people, and all of them now, it's my understanding, are off the hook because the case has been dismissed. And if I recall correctly, Ray, didn't a couple of people at least plead guilty or plead out?
Yes.
And can you remind us of who they were?
Uh, I don't remember all of them, but one was one of the Republican county officials. One was one of his less senior lawyers, the female lawyer. I can't remember her name, but she pleaded guilty as well. So there were 3 or 4 guilty pleas. I don't know what the dismissal of the case will mean
Yes.
on their guilty pleas. That's somewhat of a murky area, but you're right. There were over 20 co-defendants in this case,
Hmm.
and 3 or 4, probably 4 of them pled out, and now the charges go away for the others, and I don't know what. I'm sure they'll try to come up with some grounds to overturn their plea agreements going forward since the case
And
was thrown out.
I'd like to just circle back because you did touch upon the Coffee County. You didn't mention that it was Coffee County, but what's of great concern to election integrity individuals is that the access that was given to the machines provided evildoers, let's call them, a term that
We're going to sit down in the
W. Bush
room for a minute
like to
and
use,
enjoy the beauty.
that they would then have access to codes that they could then use to steal votes in the future, and makes our system vulnerable. So
Is that right, Ray?
Yeah, yes. There's no question that they were up to nefarious intent in terms of getting access to those Coffee County voting machines, and we don't know because we didn't get to trial, so we don't know the extent to which they were able to get full access to the underlying software and code.
Unbelievable. For those of you who are on the radio, we're with Ray McClendon, leader of Citizens United for Justice in Atlanta, getting a wrap on the dismissal of the case against Donald Trump from the 2020 phone call. Only Donald Trump could have made a phone call like that. Tammy Wilson, you former congressional candidate in Ohio, and then John Steiner. Somebody's speaking in the background there.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Can a federal judge take that to Supreme Court or challenge it or something? It just seems egregious that it is just so obvious that it is corrupt and, just corrupt. I mean, where are the checks and balances legally It just doesn't seem right to me that someone who's in Trump's back pocket can actually dismiss the case and then it just goes away. And then there's no accountability at all whatsoever. So can another federal judge or something challenge the dismissal? Or is there any kind of recourse that anything can be made? That's my question.
No, there's no recourse. And the reason being, these are state charges. Fonnie Willis took it all the way up to the state Supreme Court and she lost her appeal. Remember that these are state Supreme Court judges who have a certain predisposition. And so they have exhausted all legal remedies. Scandalakis was the backstop. And unfortunately, as I said, his predisposition was in favor of the MAGA platform. And he's, he wrapped it up with a nice bow on and put a nice bow on it. But we already knew based upon the way he had ruled by doing nothing in the past on a similar case with the lieutenant governor, how this was going to end up. It was only the national media that thought this was going somewhere. It was nobody locally that saw this as anything than what it was, which was a sham.
Unbelievable. John, thank you, Tammy. John Steiner. John.
Hey, Ray. Good to see you as always.
Yes, sir.
This is a little tangential, so you may want to answer it later or not at all on this call. But given the number of voters who have been suppressed in Georgia, particularly black voters, and I know you all have been working on that, do you see any light at the end of that tunnel going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We're encouraged by the municipal elections that we had in November, the turnout that we had in those municipal races and in those two PSC races that which were statewide races where for the first time in over 20 years we were able to elect two Democratic members who were on the ballot for PSC and
Public Service
Public
Commission.
Safety, the Public Service Commission, which regulates the utility rates for Georgia Power and others here in the state. So that was a big deal.
Yes.
That was a big deal. So we feel that there is a move afoot. People are recognizing the havoc that is coming down upon all people, not just Black people in the state of Georgia, but across the country by this current administration and by the MAGA agenda. And so I think that there are going to be significant opportunities for higher voter turnout going forward in 2026. Because in 26, not only will we have the midterm elections for the congressional offices and Senator John Ossoff's seat, we also will have all of the constitutional offices in the state of Georgia. So it'll be a big election in 26 for governor, lieutenant governor, all of the other, labor commissioners, secretary of state, et cetera. So there will be much greater turnout, I believe, than we initially thought. And when turnout is up, progressives win.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. When turnout is down, then it goes against progressive activity. And unfortunately, in 2024, turnout was down. In the Black community, turnout was down by a point and a half. And that makes the difference in Georgia, where we have almost a third of the registered voters. So we're looking to reverse that trend and get the percentage turnout back up. And based upon what we see right now, we expect that to be the case.
So one last question. So do you have any prognostication for Tennessee 7 happening on Wednesday with Afton Ben?
I don't have any prognostication other than I think it's going to be close, which in itself is a victory. I'm hoping for a victory. But when you consider that Trump won that by 21, 22 points, and we're talking about a toss-up in a red state like Tennessee, that's not a battleground state, then it shows you that a fire has been lit under progressives and minorities, and the MAGA party is losing the momentum that they were gaining with certain populations like the Hispanic population, that is going to be completely reversed with what we see going on with ICE and other things. So we're just hoping to take that momentum into tomorrow. We have some races here that are runoffs tomorrow, so we have folks out at the polls tomorrow as well, and we're hoping that she can squeeze it out. But the mere fact that is in play, that particular seat is in play, tells you the strength of the progressive momentum right now.
Right. I just watched a clip. Fox News ran an interview with a psychiatrist who was laughing about Trump derangement syndrome, as if people who were opposing Trump now were somehow, but they missed the fact that the reason for Trump derangement syndrome is that Trump is deranged. And I think that message has gotten around. Mike Hurst, I want to ask Ray about Marjorie Taylor Greene and the impact that's had on the state. I've seen no state-based reporting on that. Mike, did you want to jump in real quick, and so then we can proceed with Ray here?
Yeah, thanks, Lago. Ray, thank you so much for staying with us and reporting on the important goings on in Georgia and for all the organizing that you're doing. I also appreciate you looking to the recent past and looking forward on positive developments that we can build on. But before we move on, I want you to reiterate, you came here and you warned people that there was a setup on Ms. Willis, and there was an effort to set her up and take her out because there were no alternatives. And you warned us that if she were forced to step down from this prosecution, that it would be, would go into a hole and nothing would be done. And it was frustrating to me to see a lot of people on this Zoom at that time saying, well, can't you find somebody else? And she shouldn't have had an affair, as if that had anything to do with it. And if you could please reiterate your warnings and then kind of do a victory lap on how, you've been vindicated.
Well, well, thank you for that, Mike. I appreciate that. But I think the bottom line is that what this is a lesson for us all is that we've got to keep our eye on the ball and what are the priorities, and not get caught up in the fog of distraction from this corrupt regime and its inability to or its direct intent not to follow the rule of law. The difference with Trump and, say, Nixon or others is that he's doing it all out in the open. It's all out in the open. And we have become desensitized to it when it relates to this regime versus what goes on in the normal case. So to your point, here we were raising the level of an affair to this point of completely disqualifying a woman. When you look at someone who is a 34 times convicted felon, who has been adjudicated as a sexual abuser, and all of these things that are documented but are dismissed and given the benefit of the doubt. And that has now spilled down, not just from him, but to many of the people around him. We don't need to talk about Tom Homan and what went on with him taking, $50,000 cash or whatever it was in a Cava restaurant bag. And these things just go away. We don't talk about how they're just buying pardons and commutations for $1 million. The meme coin that is putting billions of dollars in his pocket. So there's just a corrupt regime that's going on. But here we now are taking a lady out because she had an affair that, yeah, she could have handled it differently, but we took the bait on that when we knew, those of us here in the state knew that Fonnie Willis had demonstrated courage and wanted to follow the law, and she was the only one that had the courage to step up and go against all of those people, starting with the president of the United States, but also the governor, the head of the state senate, the speaker of the House for the state of Georgia. She put herself out there against all of those people, and we had people run from her because of this one, somewhat less than stellar judgment that she made, overlooking all of the good work that she had done. And she was reelected, by the way, in her race to be DA again. So those who were judging her, I was just saying, we were saying here, why are you judging her much more harshly than you're judging the person that she is bringing these charges against, who has already been adjudicated in multiple other settings as being corrupt?
Unbelievable. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. By the way, I wanted to quickly comment. I'm wearing a Jamaica shirt because I just saw a piece on Jamaica. The hurricane that just hit Jamaica was stronger than Katrina, and there were whole towns in Jamaica that were completely wiped out. And so I just want to I'm not just coming back from the beach. This is an important, and we are working. I was recently down there and started talking to people about solarizing Jamaica, which we're going to talk about in the next hour. And Ron Leonard has been involved with that. And there's people in Jamaica that want to build a nuclear plant there. You got to be kidding me. And a lot of Jamaica is still without power. It's a very big deal, a very big problem, especially in an island that's so dependent on tourism. So that's the reason for the Jamaica shirt. Ruth Strauss, you're our Alabama representative, and then we're going to go discuss Marjorie Taylor Greene. Ruth,
Hey,
please.
thank Ray. I remember distinctly you talked about the voter turnout was not as good as expected during the last election. I remember saying, should I get people to go down there? Should we phone bank or whatever? And I believe that, Andrea Miller was saying, no, we really want money to pay these young people to go door to door and talk to people, which was a good idea, but I'm wondering whether it was quote unquote a good enough idea, meaning what other things do you think we or anyone can do to up the participation in this cycle?
Well, it starts with grassroots organizing, which, as you know, that's what we do, along with the other organizations that we collaborate with. And what Andrea said was absolutely true and continues to be true, which is that the main PACs, the party, and others believe in putting money in TV ads, as opposed to putting money into grassroots organizing, which includes door-to-door canvassing. There's no substitute for going door to door talking to citizens. There's just nothing better than that. In all of my experience, I have not seen anything better than that. And unfortunately, because of the way that the political consultant class is set up, they make money off of continuing to push money into ads because they get compensated off of it. They get a kickback out of that. So you don't get the money on the street with people who have relationships in those communities. That's why we call it relational organizing, which is the people that know the local community. And so we would always say, no, I don't need people from Chicago or LA or New York to fly in to go into Albany, Georgia to get in the street to talk to people. I need funding to support the local people who go to church with these folks, go teach them in the schools and so forth, to be the ones out in the street that they have a connection with and a relationship with that can be the motivating factor to get them to turn out to the polls. And that's going to continue to be the case. And it continues to be one of the flaws in the way that our GOTV, get out the vote activities for progressive candidates continues to fall further and further behind.
Well,
We have got to organize around grassroots activities. That is the number one thing. It always has been, and it's going to be number one in 2026.
well, then fine, I'll come to you in a second. But Ray, I wanted to ask you, how did that play out in Virginia in this recent
Well,
governor's
well,
race? I know
well,
that Andrea.
I mean, Andrea is the poster child. I mean, she is the litmus test. They were very active, and she can speak to this much better than I can. But just in candidly talking to her and knowing the infrastructure that she had in place across the state, they were able to directly deal with specifically Black voters and increase that turnout across the targeted counties. And she has data. I don't know if she's compiled it yet for the November election, but I know that she has compiled documentation that shows that where uh, Center for Common Ground had specific outreach activities. She was able to increase turnout by several percentage points in the Black community in those specific areas. So the point being, we know that this works. This is not something that's just a hypothesis. There's documentation that when you get grassroots organizers into the community, in the Black community. I don't know how it works for other communities, but in the Black communities, in these battleground states, it makes a difference in turnout. We tried to tell people that were working on the progressive side, people from the Harris campaign, that they were not getting the vote out to the extent that they needed to. And we were told they had it under control. But
Yeah.
but the Harris campaign is not the only one that had happened to. We've seen that in other campaigns, and they do it over and over again, expecting to bring in these high-priced political consultants who are making six-figure salaries and above, who then get almost seven-figure payouts on media buys, seven-figure
Yeah.
payouts on media buys,
And then they
and expect
disappear.
that to make a difference. Now, that may make a difference in some communities, but I can guarantee you that's not what makes a difference in being involved in this for decades. That's not what makes a difference in the Black community.
You got it. And tell it to John Kerry and Hillary Clinton as well. And Al Gore. Lynn Feinerman, you want to raise something? Then we're going to talk about Marjorie Greene if we can.
Yeah, I just want to add to what Ray has said that the Democrats have always been that way. The Hillary Clinton loss is attributable to a bunch of rich little tech wizards sitting in their offices and thinking that they had reached the American people, and they had not at all. And so it's always been that way. The Democrats make huge mistakes in this regard, and I doubt that they will even learn from Zoran and his campaign.
Well, some
and
will.
The way he organized. I mean, over 100,000 people in New York knocking on doors. So I doubt that he'll learn. But I just want to grind my feminist axe a little bit here and say, why has no one gone after that horrid creature, Kristi Noem, for her affair with Corey Lewandowski and their plane that they got or whatever, and his doing all kinds of things for her. When he's not qualified, he's not even hired to do anything. That's what I don't, I just don't get why the repugs go after this and people like the Rump go after this so hard, and they always manage to corner somebody when the Democrats and the people on the other side are so lax about how they go after people.
The question answers itself at this point, but very good point, Lynn, and let's keep on that target. Ray, you want to comment and then segue into Mary?
No, I completely agree with Lynn. I mean, and she raises a great point, and that's what we see over and over. And it's not to say that progressives should not be have to follow the rule of law, and when they've done things that violate the law, that they should be held to account. But Fonnie Willis's indiscretion here, and that's what I would call it, an indiscretion, a lapse of ethical judgment, did not rise to the level of having to be recused from this case. Yeah, yeah. Ethically, should she have done it? Many people said no, but it did not rise to that level. She did not do anything illegal. And that was the critical part. That is the difference. And to Lynn's point, there's so many things that this corrupt regime is doing in your face illegally each and every day. The latest of which are these strikes on these boats coming out of the Caribbean. I mean, it's just things that are being done corruptly each and every day that they just explain away, and we've got a complicit media, mainstream media, that's not holding them to account. And we get bombarded with so much of it that I feel like we're just desensitized to the level of corruption that now is permeating the entire MAGA movement. And we need to hold them to account and not let them do this whataboutism where a small indiscretion is taken against all of the major corruption that you see going on the other side, and try to say, well, it's just tit for tat. No, it is not. There's an order of magnitude here that defies logic when you really just peel it back, and we've got to force the issue on that.
Well, I think the big difference between Fonnie and Fonnie, her indiscretion, and Trump's is that the person that she had her affair with was actually of legal age. But let's proceed, and we want to talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene, and she's in your backyard. What kind of impact do you see this having in Georgia, and what's going to happen to her seat?
Too early to tell on what's going to happen with her seat. It'll depend on who decides to run for that seat. This is a very red, it's a ruby red area. So it's going to be hard to flip as we look forward. But let me just say that with Marjorie Taylor Greene, there's not much that I have agreed with her on in the past. But I can say that I give her credit for having read the room correctly on the Epstein situation, on healthcare, on grocery prices. And she could be, I'm not saying necessarily yet that she is, but she could be the canary in the coal mine that gives us hope that we're going to be able to convert some of these districts as some of the most pro-MAGA people see the handwriting on the wall and decide to retire or not run again, et cetera. So this has helped for the bigger issue for me with what she has done is what it imports for the future in 2026, more so than what she is going to do right away, because I think that's really one of the first cracks in the MAGA wall that looked to be impenetrable for so long. This gives hope that there are finally some cracks that we might be able to break through in some districts that we didn't think were going to be available in 2026.
Has there been a strong right-wing reaction in Georgia against her leaving the Trump fold?
Not from any political leadership. She's gotten death threats and all of those psycho phone calls. Uh, but I think that we'll see more of where this shakes out once she formally resigns and we see who decides to run for her seat. It's going to be interesting because where she goes from here um, is probably not going to be a statewide race in 2026. So it's just hard to see what the path forward for her is. She's not going away. But it's not clear what the path is going to be, given how late it is for her to try to jump in. And if she jumps into any, like the state, the Senate race for Ossoff's seat or for governor or anything, she would get pummeled just as she would to run for her House district race. So there'll be some recalculating going on, but the big takeaway for me is that truly she read the room, and this could be the first break in the dam, so to speak.
Well, she read the room and she decided to get out of the room. This is
Right.
this
And
is
I hope others follow. I mean, that's what we hope, is that others will follow.
right. Well, there's a lot of press going on about all the big cracks in the MAGA firmament, including I guess a lot of people are surprised that the death of Charlie Kirk actually had the opposite effect of what people thought. They thought it would be a giant rallying point for the MAGA movement, and it was for a nanosecond, and now there seems to be chaos. I have a really off the wall question, but I got to ask it, Ray. Is there any chance that Marjorie Taylor Greene would ever make the connection between skyrocketing electric rates in Georgia and the nuclear plant?
I don't know. I don't know if you're talking about somebody that was talking about space lasers. Harvey, so I don't know if she's got the bandwidth to make that connections.
Well, is anybody making it? We're going to talk about energy in the second hour. Is anybody in Georgia connecting the rising electric rates with the fact that this nuclear plant came online?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the critical reasons why um, we were able to win those two PSC races. They
Okay.
recognize that Vogel has billions of dollars in cost overruns that the ratepayers end up having to cover. They recognize that these data centers that are going up are tremendous drains on the power grid, and that they claim that those data centers are being carved out and are not impacting the rate base, but that's dubious at best. People are beginning to notice that. So to me, there's an underlying wave that's occurring around what everybody's calling affordability now.
Right.
But affordability for me is different than general inflation, because what people are seeing is what their bills that are coming in every month are going up. Their utility rates are going up every month, and they see that bill. When they go to the grocery store, their bills are higher, and they see that. Their children who are in their 20s are moving back home because they can't afford rent.
Right.
So
Right.
all of those things are happening in their face, and then they're being gaslit by this regime, this corrupt regime, saying, "Oh, everything is fine. Inflation's actually going down," and people are saying, "No, that's not what I see with my
Yeah.
own
Right.
eyes
Right.
when I have to go to the store. That's
And
not what I
the
see when
times,
I open my utility bill." So those things are what are going to drive the 2026 elections, in my opinion. That and those basic kitchen table of affordability issues, along with healthcare.
okay. Very good.
Hey,
Um, uh,
Sluggo, speaking of
yes.
healthcare, we only have about 7 minutes in this segment, and we have a guest who's
Yes,
been
please.
patiently waiting
Ray, can
to
All
you
right,
stick with
no,
us? Mike
good.
Hurst has brought us a special guest, Tammy and Lynn, if you'll stick with us. But Mike, if you can introduce your guest and the topic, we are thrilled. We still have 63 people with us, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, here in Maryland, we have a lot of progressives who are working very hard on reforms, and I'm very pleased and honored to bring medical doctor Ellen Olson from Physicians for National Health Program to come and talk to us about the organizing that's going on in Maryland. Don't want to take up any more time, but thank you so much for joining us, Doctor.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. As Mike said, I'm Krita Olson. I'm a public health physician in Maryland and a board member of Physicians for a National Health Program. So those of you that don't know about our organization, we're a organization of doctors, students, healthcare advocates, that's been working for the past like 37 years to really improve access to care. So we believe high quality healthcare is a right for everyone and should be equitable. So we've been fighting profiteering in healthcare and really advocating for a single payer Medicare for all system within the US. And so I'm here, thanks to Mike, to kind of talk about our latest campaign on Medicaid deprivatization. I'm going to share some slides to make it easier to kind of get through some of this. Let me know if you can see that.
And Ray, I'm sure, thank you, Ray, again for joining us. I'm sure a lot of this is going to play out in Georgia as well and in all of our states. So go ahead, please, Doctor.
All
And
right,
we
so
and we can see the slides. They look great.
they
But
look
you got
right.
to remember, we're on the radio, so you got to tell us what very
Yep,
explicitly what's being said.
sounds good.
Can you go
So
full screen, please?
yeah, let me know if you see it
Yeah,
still
we're
as
good. We're good. Go ahead.
uh,
So
you still see it
this
if
is
I put it in
about
slideshow mode.
Medicaid managed care, and you're talking about removing the middlemen from Medicaid, obviously aiming to lower health costs. And of course, we're all going to see the big hammer come down what the Republicans are trying to do. And that's what you're
Yes,
opposing, Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, as you just mentioned, the big ugly bill is going to cut Medicaid by 1 trillion over the next 10 years. And it really leaves states with very little options, very few options in terms of how to deal with it. They can either, of course, cut eligibility, as DC is looking to do, in decreasing the percentage of the federal poverty level that people have to be able to meet to actually qualify for Medicaid. They can cut reimbursement rates, and Medicaid is already the least, it is the lowest reimbursement rate, so not many doctors do take it. They can cut services, what actually is covered for their Medicaid patients, or they can raise taxes. And so they're really facing a lot of poor options. But one thing that they're not really considering is actually removing the private middlemen, the managed care organizations that many states use to actually deliver Medicaid benefits. So I have a chart here that shows how much Medicaid has become privatized over the past few decades. We're
So you're
constantly
now saying
talking.
that 35%, 75%
Yes.
of Medicaid provision is being done through private parties, all of which, of course, directly benefit the Trump family.
Yes, exactly. The majority of them are big insurance companies. I think when you boil down to it, 4 insurance companies really own the market for Medicaid managed care. And it's going at a faster rate than even Medicare. And so one thing that we have noticed, of course, we know that they actually provide no use at all. They're just middlemen that take the money, the taxpayer money that is for Medicaid, and say that they're going to be decreasing how much spending is happening by doing better care coordination, actually making sure that medically necessary care is provided, there's no waste and fraud, et cetera. But ultimately, these companies are just profiting off of our vulnerable communities. So Connecticut actually went through the process of removing managed care organizations from their Medicaid delivery in 2012. And over these past 12 years, they saved $4 billion from the overhead that they managed to cut out of the system through these managed care organizations. So because of this, my PNHP as well as People's Action have considered this as a valid and actually useful option for addressing the Medicaid cuts that are coming. So other than saving, the $4 billion, Connecticut also improved healthcare for people. So a graph here displays how early stage cancer diagnosis improved drastically in Connecticut after they eliminated MCOs in 2012, versus a neighboring state, New Jersey, which was on par with Connecticut for their actual quality of care, continues to be poor with early cancer diagnosis, which can make a big difference for cancer patients and literally, of course, saves lives if you're able to detect cancer earlier and do much more aggressive treatments and actually either cut cancer, stop cancer with the treatment, et cetera. So it
So
also
what you're
has improved
saying is
care.
that there's a radical increase in the effectiveness of detecting cancer early when you get rid of these middlemen organizations. Is that right?
Yes, because we know,
Okay.
like most private insurance companies, like Medicare Advantage, the privately delivered Medicare, insurance companies use care denials and care delays through prior authorizations, through very narrow networks, and even cost sharing. So when all of these components are removed because private insurance is not in the middle anymore, delivering Medicaid benefits, then people have access to care. They're able to actually get care when they need it and address things as they come up. And that leads to better health outcomes.
Okay, good. All
Yep.
right, very good. If you
So,
could run through quickly now, that'd be great.
yep. Yeah, so as I said, this prompted us to consider this as a valid option for other states at this time with the Medicaid cuts. And we have a full report on what it would mean for each state that I'll put in the chat. But essentially, it provides the methodology for how we came up with this. But most states can see about a 10% to 17% savings from removing their managed care organizations. And for example, Florida would see a 1.3 billion saved per
Wow.
year. New York would see 4.4 billion saved per year, and all of this really adds up to 77 billion per year in savings if you remove our managed care organizations from Medicaid.
Good.
So, we have a campaign currently of actually trying to do this on a state by state level, especially as nationally, we do not have that much opportunity to really transform healthcare at the national level under this regime. So Minnesota and Hawaii currently have bills in their state legislators targeting managed care organizations at the state level and trying to remove them. And other than the savings that could be used to actually keep everyone on Medicaid that already is there or improve services for Medicaid patients, there's better care coordination when you actually remove managed care organizations. Physicians have very little, they face very little administrative burden without these MCOs, all the prior authorizations and the paperwork, et cetera, all the phone calls, peer-to-peer, et cetera. That, when you remove that, it leaves a lot of time for them to be able to actually take care of patients. And that autonomy makes it easier for them and also more likely for them to accept Medicaid as an insurance and improves access for patients. So overall, there's a lot of reasons why this would be very beneficial other than the savings. And we know that across the political spectrum, there's ways that you can message this campaign and get people on board. So that's why I wanted to talk to you guys on the call. If everyone on this call looked at the report, sees if they have a local PNHP chapter or People's Action chapter that is kind of taking on this campaign or are interested in starting something within their state, I think we can really transform how our Medicaid patients get care in the next few years. And I will leave it at that as
It's a great
thing.
report. Dr. Olson, it's a great report.
Yeah.
How do people get in touch with you and your organization? Can you tell us verbally and put it in the chat?
Yep. I'll put it in the chat. I also wanted to raise
But
awareness.
tell us now, how do we get a hold of you and how do we get a hold of your organization?
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat. And the website I linked before is our official website. PNHP.org is our official website. And I'll put my email in the chat.
PNHP.org.
Yes.
Okay. Paul
And
Nancy Hotel Paul.
And
.org.
And my full name, alankrita.olson@gmail is how you can get in touch with me. We will have all the resources for really undertaking this campaign on our website. And if you're in the DC area, actually, NNU is having a rally on Wednesday at outside the White House at Lafayette Park to talk about ACA subsidy expansion and really getting that through before the end of the year, and people lose their subsidies next year. So if you're in the area and you wanted to come to that action, I encourage you to join us. But that's it for me today.
Well, that's great. And what a great report. Somebody asked if they can share your website and your email with state officials. Is that okay with you?
Yes, no, definitely. The report, and we have sample legislation that Hawaii and Minnesota are using, and these legislative language has been adapted by Maryland currently by Progressive Maryland People's Action chapter in Maryland to start creating language for our legislative session starting in January. They're working with local delegates within the Maryland General Assembly. So they have a whole campaign, and I'm sure there might be efforts happening wherever you are. So once you start looking to see if you want to get involved, then I'm sure you can definitely help out with anything that might be happening locally at your state, or even start the process if you'd like, because we have a lot of resources. So most of the heavy lifting's been done, and it really just takes people kind of pushing for it.
Doctor, we'll have you come back. Tammy, Lynn, and Don will give you each a minute, and then we're going to move into our energy segment. Tammy Wilson, please. Somebody.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment to kind of piggyback a little bit on what Ray was talking about. Online marketing is the absolute most effective way to market campaigns and everything. It is the most economical. It reaches the most people. The problem with Democrats is that they don't do it right. Republicans, they use psychotropic marketing. It's when they educate and they kind of change people's way of thinking over time because they
Okay.
put out a post and then they put out a series of messaging over time to change everyone's thinking. They target a specific demographic, and that's what, Democrats need to do, and what, our organization, because I was working with the Ohio
And Tammy,
for healthcare.
Could we have you come back and do a deep dive on what you're talking about? And also, if you
Well,
could please
I'm
mute.
talking in regards to the healthcare
No, we
initiative too,
got you.
because we were
And
working
if
on
you,
that as well.
Tammy, if you could please mute the TV or whatever you have going on in the
I
background, that'd
don't
be
have
great.
Okay, thank you, Tammy. We'll get back to you again. Don, and then Mike, we're going to go to our hour. And Gwen Du Bois, Dr. Du Bois, you'll be joining us in the nuclear hour.
And everybody,
Go ahead,
please,
Don.
if you raise your hand, please mute whatever TV or radio you have going on in the background because it can be a little distracting.
Don
Thanks.
McCann, take a minute, please, and then we're going to rock and roll.
Yes, I want to strongly reinforce what Dr. Olson has said. I'm a former president of PNHP from quite a few
Oh,
years ago.
cool.
And the right now they're doing studies and making recommendations on incremental improvements in healthcare. But I want to remind everyone of the fundamental defects. We pay twice what other nations pay for healthcare, and our performance is amongst the lowest of all industrialized nations. And so we do need single payer improved Medicare for all. And I would strongly recommend going to the PNHP website first to see the studies that Dr. Olson has been speaking about, and then to reinforce our support of single payer improved Medicare for all. It is about to become a popular uh, uh, political item again, as the Republicans have screwed up their efforts to correct the healthcare system. So anyway, that's I just
Excellent. Don, your
right.
comments are always great. I do want to thank both Ray McClendon and you, Dr. Olson, for correctly referring to this as a regime. It's not an administration, and these guys are not authoritarian, they're dictatorial, and we got to get clear on that. Okay, so we got to move in now. I know Paul Newman, you've been working on statewide healthcare. I want to give you a minute to jump in here with Dr. Olson, and we still have Ray with us. Do you want to make a comment? Then we'll go to nuclear stuff.
Yeah, I'll make a quick comment. We have a bill called AB 2200, which was suppressed by Gavin Newsom, our governor, and Buffy Wicks, who was in the Assembly Appropriations. There was no in the Appropriation Committee. That's supposed to be for financial related stuff. What AB 2200 is a skeletal bill that would set up a single payer system with no insurance companies, and it would get permission for a waiver called the 1330 waiver. I don't know if you've heard of it, which would give us all the Medicare, Medicaid, ACA, all that funding would go towards the single payer trust fund. And then progressive tax would be the idea. And it'd be like equivalent to one premium payment for the whole year.
You know what, Paul?
That's it.
You and Dr. Olson should be in direct contact.
Yeah, but I just want to complete.
Yeah,
If you
please go
go
ahead.
if you go to HC4 number 4 US.org, and I'll put it in the chat, you can see what our plans are. We're putting together a coalition um, that that with all these other organizations called the California United for Single Payer, CUSP organization. And we're coordinating that and getting information from Whole Washington, which is another organization. And in Minnesota, they have a Medicare for All system, but we're part of that. So I just want to let you know to conclude. And I put the website is amazing. It's like a little Google for single payer healthcare. And it has everything in it from comedy about single payer and what's going on now with all the cuts to Medicaid and everything,
Okay.
and how now we're ripe for a single payer system.
Yeah, this movement is very strong in California, Dr. Olson, and Ray McClendon maybe be picked up in California. But Dr. Olson, you should be in touch with Paul Newman. He's not the actor, but he's actually better looking. So you two guys should be in touch. Please do exchange your contacts, okay? All right, that was a great session. Thank you again, Ray McClendon. Thank you, Dr. Olson. Thank you, Mike, for bringing Dr. Olson. We're now going to dive in. We're going to record two sessions of the California Solartopia show, which focuses on energy. We have with us. Well, let me introduce us. Let's do an introduction here, and then we're going to move on. We still have 65 people with us. Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Wasserman. I'm back for another edition of the California Solartopia Show. We have a tremendous half hour with some of the greatest experts in the country on what's happening with nuclear power nationwide, and particularly in California with our governor's race, and also with the decimation of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You know, with Donald Trump in league with Elon Musk and that Doge operation, among the many things that they slashed in terms of government programs was the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And there are 94 operating reactors in the United States, including the two at Diablo Canyon, directly upwind from us in Los Angeles, at KPFK territory. And this show, by the way, is being recorded through the virtual studio of KPFK with Myla Reeson as our producer and Gary Scott as our engineer, along with Steve Caruso. And what we have today is an incredibly great, powerful panel on people who can give us the real inside scoop on this very important question that nobody is asking, which is what have these cuts done on a day-to-day basis to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and to the safety of the operation, the daily operation of our 94 atomic reactors. We've got Arnie Gunderson, Kevin Camps, Roger Rappaport, Carl Grossman, Ron Leonard, and others. But I want to start with Arnie Gunderson. Dr. Gwen Du Bois is also with us, and we hope you'll chime in, Dr. Du Bois. But Arnie Gunderson is a nuclear engineer, an actual bona fide nuclear engineer. During the 2011 disaster at Fukushima, Arnie was the go-to guy for the global media on what was really happening at Fukushima. We would have no idea if it wasn't for Arnie. And Arnie had risen to the top levels of the nuclear industry as an engineer, and then found, shall we say, another way, and sailed off to Solartopia, and is joining us now in California Solartopia. Arnie, can you answer this life and death global question? What has been the tangible impact of the Doge cuts to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and how does that really bode for the safety of these reactors on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. I've always felt that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is a lapdog, not a watchdog. But since Trump's been in, it's as if the lapdog had its teeth removed and its vocal cords cut. What's happening now is that Trump has an executive order out there that is requiring the NRC to expedite its reviews. An example is a plant I'm working on now is Palisades in Michigan. And Palisades is 50 some odd years old. It's been closed for about 4 years. And the heat is on for that plant to be restarted up again. But we're seeing that everywhere. You see it at Diablo Canyon in California, Palisades in Michigan. There's also a 3 Mile Island Unit 1, not the one that melted down, but Unit 1 is also on short final to start back up. and Dwayne Arnold in Iowa is another one. So there's pressure on these old nukes to restart. But in addition, Trump's been pushing the new nukes, whether they're small modular reactors. There's like a dozen companies out there who all have grandiose ideas. So we've got a letter from the president telling the NRC to expedite their reviews, and you've got a Department of Energy that's throwing money out the window like a drunken sailor. So it's disconcerting because it doesn't make economic sense.
But what kind of let's evaluate safety at these operating reactors. Now you've had a Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which, as you say, has been a lapdog as opposed to a watchdog. And we did have, for example, a report at Diablo Canyon from a Dr. Michael Peck, who was the resident inspector from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And he reported to work every day at the Diablo Canyon reactors for 5 years. And he issued a report saying that the reactors could not withstand a likely earthquake. The commission responded not by making demands for better safety or making structural demands that would improve the ability of Diablo Canyon to survive an earthquake. Instead, they sent Dr. Michael Peck to Siberia, i.e., in this case, North Carolina, stripped him of his post, and dismissed his report, and did absolutely nothing to address the structural issue. Now, we don't even know if there's the equivalent of a Michael Peck anywhere in the system. So, what has been the actual impact? Would let's say that under the previous situation, you rated the NRC's performance and ability to guarantee safety at the nuclear plants at 100. What would you guarantee it now? How would you rate it now after the Doge cuts?
I wouldn't rate it at 100 ever. But let me touch on Michael Peck. The NRC has this process they claim to protect concerned scientists, and they call it a DPO, a differing professional opinion. And in theory, you're allowed to write a DPO after you've tried every single avenue within the NRC to get your concerns heard. There was a study out that Dave Lochbaum got out with Senator Tammy Duckworth that shows that every single NRC person who filed a DPO, and they were supposed to be protected now, every single one of them had retribution against them by the agency. So, we've never ever had a fair regulator. I think what the Trump emphasis on expediency in the licensing process does, though, is it gives the people that normally had to find excuses another excuse. They can say, "Hey, the president told us this is a vital national security issue, and therefore we have to speed up." Harvey, if it was a 10 on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 1 now.
So that you would say that the Trump Doge Musk attack has had a serious impact on the day-to-day safety of the operations of these nuclear plants?
Yeah, the employees have already felt pressure. The good employees have already felt pressure, and what the executive order does, and the whole Trump administration, including Department of Energy, is adding to their pressure. There was it actually showed up in meeting notes from the NRC where someone on the staff asked the chairman, they said, And we are under enormous pressure from the industry. They're calling our bosses left and right. We don't think we're doing a good job because of the pressure that the industry is putting on us. And the chairman of the NRC said, geez, I never heard of that.
Did he have his hands over his eyes or his
Yeah.
ears? That's amazing. Dr. Gwen, you have been shaking your head. You're from the Physicians for Social Responsibility, is that correct?
Correct.
And you are a medical doctor and a master's of public health. Can you comment on the impact? And then we'll go of the Trump cuts to the NRC, and then we'll go to Kevin and Roger and others to talk about it.
Hey, Sluggo, Gwen was here to talk about threats of nuclear weapons as well, so maybe she could tie all this in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy. That's where I know more about it. But I do want to say that an amazing quote from Ed Markey. So not only are they
Ed Markey is the
senator
senator from Massachusetts.
Massachusetts,
Yes.
yeah. So not only is the NRC people in it under pressure to rapidly permit nuclear power and what it does to safety, but he also talked about giving away plutonium for to other countries, to private corporations. I think it was mostly to corporations for their nuclear power. And Markey said you might as well just go to Costco to get your plutonium.
Yes.
So it's really an ignorance about the safety issues that is underlying all of this rush for the small modular reactors. They haven't even been yet given a commercial permit to construct. It's 10 to 20 years away, and we have a climate crisis that we need a solution to. And I would just refer people to Mark Jacobson at Stanford, who's really written, great stuff about why this is a false solution to the
Right.
climate crisis.
Mark Jacobson's book is called No Miracles Needed, and a good site, Dr. Gwen. Is it Du Bois or Dubois?
Du Bois. I'd like to say I'm related to W.E.B. Du Bois, but I would be lying.
Okay. Well, actually, my papers are at the University of Massachusetts, somewhere near his, but that's about as close as I can get to him as well. We'll come back to you, Dr. Gwen, to talk about the weapons connection. I want to go to Kevin Camps and then Roger Rappaport. These two guys, along with Carl Grossman and Ron Leonard, are experts in the actual operations of these nuclear plants. And nobody's been really looking into the impacts on a day-to-day basis. But Kevin, if anybody knows about it, you do. What do you think has been the day-to-day impact on nuclear safety of the DOGE attack on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission? Kevin?
Well, the media quote about DOGE at the NRC was rubber stamped. DOGE told the NRC to rubber stamp new reactor designs. So nuclear safety, health, environmental protection is in free fall without a parachute. So we're at perhaps the greatest safety risk in the whole time I've been doing anti-nuke activism, which is 33 years. I've never seen a deregulation of nuclear safety like we're experiencing right now under Trump. There's many poster children. Palisades is the one that I'm the most familiar with, and Arnie can give you the technical details. They're about to fire up Palisades by the end of this year, early next year, with steam generator tubes that are almost certain to blow in the first cycle, in the first 18 months, if not the first 9 months, if not the first 6 months. That's going to be a radiation release. And if you blow enough tubes in a cascading failure, that is a pathway to meltdown. Holtec has never operated a reactor. They've never built a reactor. They've never repaired a reactor. And the NRC has rubber stamped everything they've asked for in a great big hurry because Holtec is having an initial public offering in early 2026. That's driving the entire schedule.
Mind-boggling. I mean, so let's say they, in fact, do blow some of the tubes in the steam generator, right? In which everybody, you don't have to be a scientist to know that's serious. That means the radiation is leaking into the certainly into the plant and maybe into the atmosphere, and it's very serious. And that was at the root of why they closed the reactors at San Onofre between LA and San Diego. Now, as someone who lives directly downwind from Diablo Canyon, if you people think I'm obsessed with Diablo Canyon, you're 100% right. There's nothing more, impactful in my world than something that could happen, God forbid, at Diablo Canyon. If there's an accident, and when they open Palisades, if there's an accident at Palisades, who's going to know? Is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission going to actually tell the public that there's been a radiation release, or are they just going to let it go by with no mention? I guess that's an overwhelming silence there.
Harvey, I was an expert on 3 Mile Island, and I looked at the emergency plan, and at 7 o'clock in the morning, their calculations showed that there should have been a call for an evacuation. And rather than do that, they doubted the calculation and completely redid it. Meanwhile, they're buying time, and I've told Kevin this. I think that's going to happen at Palisades. Holtec is going to have a radiation release from these steam generators, and they won't believe their calculation, so they won't issue an evacuation. Once one nuclear plant issues an evacuation, it's game over for the industry. They all know that. So it's not something the owner of the plant is gonna commit to. And afterward, the NRC is gonna, 20 lashes with a wet noodle. They will not be punished for a lapse in safety like that.
Oh my God. So you're saying that basically, given what Trump has done to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, if, God forbid, there's an accident and a radiation release at Diablo Canyon, at Palisades, at any one of the reactors in the country, Fermi, Perry, you name it, is there a chance that a radiation release could happen and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission would not inform the public? Dr. Gwen, did you want to comment on that?
Well, as you're saying this, I'm wondering, should residents around Palisades be given some detectors so they can detect the radioactive release and it be organized? Because I think that with this regime, we're in a place and a time where we can't depend on regulation for public health. People have to be ready.
Roger Rappaport, you are a resident not far from Palisades. Do you have your Geiger counter ready to go? Is your car running in case you need to evacuate? Roger, are you there?
I'm here, but you have to unmute me.
We hear you. You're fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, you want to do the video too?
No, we can't do a video. So let's just go. Keep going. Just talk to us, please.
Okay, so Kevin has been working on this for over 30 years. Arnie's been working on it for probably work on the whole issue for longer than that. And as they have pointed out very clearly, the plot thickens. But there's a couple of things that I think are really critical to this conversation. Let's take a look at why the state of Michigan and why the Democratic Party, and that includes Joe Biden and our former governor, Jennifer Granholm, and our current governor, Gretchen Whitmer, are 100% behind what you're hearing today. How could that be? How could the Democratic Party and the Republican Party find common ground on this issue? Okay, well, let's start with where the money's coming from. We all know that the pharmaceutical industry is a very big backer of both parties. When you fly in an airline, you know that Delta Airlines and American are both giving money to guess who? The Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And why is that? Because they want to be sure that no matter who wins the next election, that they get what they want. It's now turning out that all these industries that have been for so long, transportation, the chemical industry, the auto industry, and so on, that have been dominant in the political system are now being bypassed by guess who? Silicon Valley. And what do they want? They want two things. They want the data centers, and then they want to fuel AI. And it's no accident that one of the companies that actually does know what it's doing, the one that's actually going to be operating 3 Mile Island, was hired by guess who? Mark Zuckerberg. Okay. They're the largest operator of nuclear power plants in the world, and they're the ones that are going to bring a 3 Mile Island plant online. Okay. They're taking 3 years. Palisades, which has a team that has no experience ever operating a nuclear reactor, that's Holtec, is rushing ahead so fast that they haven't even met the fire code that's required of the other 90 plus nuclear reactors in the country. Now, how did they get that free pass? How did they also get a free pass for work hour requirements? You know, when you fly in an airplane, that pilot can't be working 16 hours. Well, guess what's happening at Holtec, the company that's operating the reactor with zero experience ever operating a nuclear reactor? They just got a pass from the NRC, no questions asked, on work hours. They're allowed to work everybody overtime, which is completely contrary to the NRC procedure. All of this is happening for one single reason. It's that the campaign money that goes to both parties, and that includes the state of Michigan, that includes the federal, the Democrats and Republicans. Not only have they given $300 million to Holtec, now the Michigan legislature is already lining up to give more money for SMRs. Now, there's been a
wait, Roger. Let me interrupt you. By SMRs, you mean small modular reactors,
yeah.
which I always call silly
Right.
mythological ripoffs. I want to identify. We are at the California Solartopia Show.
Yeah.
We are produced. This is the California Solartopia Show on the virtual network and the production facility of KPFK Los Angeles. Thank you, station manager Maggie LePeak, and our engineer Scott, Gary Scott, and our producer is Myla Reeson, along with Steve Caruso, Mike Hirsch, and many more. We're talking with on the issue of what has the Trump Doge attack on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission done to reactor safety. We've been talking with engineer Arnie Gunderson, Dr. Gwen Du Bois of the Physicians for Social Responsibility, Kevin Camps from Beyond Nuclear, and Roger Rappaport, who is a great, great journalist and happens to live right in the vicinity of Palisades. Roger, you've got a lot at stake at this, so tell us more, please.
Okay, so the Democratic Party is completely behind this because they're also getting a lot of money, not just the Republicans. And what's happening is they have decided in Washington that the SMRs under the NRC, it would be way too slow. So what they're doing is they gave control of the small modular reactors, the new reactors that have that don't exist. They've given it to another agency. Guess which one? The Department of Energy. And guess where they're going to build the SMRs? Not at Palisades, at least not at the beginning, which is, or not at any of the private sites that they've talked about. They have another plan. They're going to build them on military bases. So we now have Pete Hegseth in charge of where the new nuclear reactors that no one in the world is operating at all. Pete Hegseth is going to be the decider. The guy who's bombing the gunboats in the Caribbean is now going to be in charge of the siting of nuclear power plants on government military property. And that means that all of the protests and all of the NIMBY stuff and all the people like us who are protesting these reactors, we're out of luck because it's all going to be done privately. And if you look at the history of some of the experimental reactors that have operated on government military land, it's not a very pretty picture. So to make matters even worse, the NRC has no control at all of the new generation of nuclear reactors. And get this, the companies that are building these reactors are all companies across the board that have never operated a nuclear power plant. And they're going to do startups of new nuclear reactors, if you can imagine that. So in other words, we have all this money from the AI, data center industry funneling into both parties. And the future of nuclear power is going to be in the hands of guess who? Pete Hegseth.
Well, but also, Roger, and the New York Times recently ran a piece on this. The push for new reactors, the actual money is going to a very small cabal of
Right.
Trump billionaires.
Right.
It's not like there's this grassroots movement that we want more data centers and we want more AI. This is all very specifically for the benefit of a very small group of people.
And Harvey, I want to interrupt you and make this point. On the bidding for this money, there's over $400 billion at stake here. That's the payout for all the lobbying that they've done to all these politicians. And that process is bipartisan, totally. This money that's going for the payout, the companies that are bidding are not people that operate nuclear power plants. For example, General Electric and Westinghouse, which have a long history of building nuclear power plants, did not bid for this money. Now, why is that? Why do you think that?
Maybe
It's because
maybe the four General Electric reactors that exploded at Fukushima, maybe that had a
that
small
had something to do with it. It's called reputational damage. They don't want to damage their other business, which is conventional light water reactors. In other words, they have a reputation at stake and they don't want to be sullied by an unproven technology. They're being conservative.
Right. So what we have here is a situation very typical of the regime, of the Trump regime, which is, I don't use the word administration, it is a regime. And we have a small group of people who are poised and who are in the process of privately profiting from this so-called nuclear renaissance.
You understand that the IPO that Kevin Camps talked about for Holtec, the whole reason that they're rushing so hard, get this, Kevin talked about the tubes possibly cracking. There's a report from Holtec's own consultant on what happened when they took a look at the tubes after they decided to restart the reactor, which closed in 2022. And the cracking rate is 4 times the industry average. There's no question that there's going to be, at the best case scenario, at the next recycling, they have to refuel every 18 months. At that point, they're going to have to shut down because the cracking is going to be a lot worse. It could be sooner. And if it cracks sooner, they're going to have to shut down for that reason. They can't keep operating.
But here's the question.
So why are they rushing for the IPO? It's because they want to get the money for the IPO before anything possibly could go wrong that would damage their standing with the investment community.
Well, but then the question arises, if at Palisades, not to mention Diablo Canyon or other reactors around the country that are already operating, if they have an accident like tube cracking,
right,
and if radiation is released, which it definitely will be. Now, and when that was confronted, the reality was confronted at San Onofre between LA and San Diego, where they did have a radiation release.
Correct.
It was reported by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Under the current circumstance, after DOGE has swept through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and cleansed, sent to Siberia all the troublesome people who actually take regulation seriously, what's going to happen?
I agree with Dr. Dubois. No, I agree with Dr. Dubois. People will have their own Geiger counters. The state of Michigan will be on it because obviously it affects tourism, it affects real estate values, it affects the entire agricultural industry. There's no way they're going to not monitor that. What's going to happen
Well,
is,
as my mother used to say, Roger Rappaport, from your lips to God's ears. We're going to continue this. This has been California Solartopia. I'm your host, Harvey Wasserman. We've been engineered by Gary Scott and Steve Caruso in the virtual studios of KPFK in Los Angeles. Myla Reeson is our producer. And if you aren't terrified enough, come back next week to California Solartopia and listen to the ongoing discussion of what's really happening with our atomic reactors, including the 2 that are directly upwind from California, in Los Angeles, California Solartopia, KPFK, where I live, and I am terrified. And if you're not paying attention. We'll see you next week at California Solartopia. Okay, we're going to reintroduce now. This is the second part. We're going to go another half hour. I am really, every time I do
Roger,
this, I
you
get
can
more
start your
afraid.
video.
What's that?
Roger can start his video. Anybody's co-host.
Okay,
But
you're all
everybody,
co-hosts?
wait, before, just please, everybody pay attention to the chat. If I ask you to wrap, and I tell you that there are only 2 minutes left, please don't start a new discussion. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Myla Reeson, a great producer. We still have 57 people with us. We're going to go another half hour now. We're going to go obviously over the top of the hour, but we won't go past 4:20 where everybody's got to go toke up. So you ready? Okay, here we go. Hey, everybody, this is Harvey Wasserman back with the California Solartopia Show, another edition produced at the virtual studios of KPFK Los Angeles. Our producer is Myla Reeson. The engineers are Gary Scott and Steve Caruso, and we are having a discussion about the terrors of what's really been unleashed now with the Trump regime assault on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission has never had much credibility. It's always been, as Arnie Gunderson says, who's with us, the great nuclear engineer, more of a lapdog than a watchdog. But we're now in a situation where the commission has been stripped of even the most lax of its regulatory staff. And, we who live downwind from Diablo Canyon, and Roger Rappaport is with us, who lives next door to the Palisades in Michigan. Kevin Camps, who's a native of Kalamazoo, and Gwen Dubois from the Physicians for Social Responsibility, and the great Arnie Gunderson, who really guided us through the Fukushima disaster. We're also joined by Ron Leonard, one of the godfathers of the renewable energy industry. I want to very quickly revisit this discussion, Arnie. How much less safe are reactors like Diablo Canyon because of the Doge sweep than they were before?
I don't think Diablo Canyon was ever very safe, nor Palisades. But there probably are good people at the NRC, but the Trump executive orders are forcing them to keep their head down. Plus that the general culture is everybody keeps their head down. But I'd say they're less safe, Harvey. Um, Let me just add one thing here on these small modular reactors. Most of them run on bomb grade uranium. So that goes right over to PSR. We're trucking bomb grade uranium around the country to run these small modular reactors. That's
Well, let's take
Dr.
that. Thank you, Arnie. Let's take that to Dr. Gwen Dubois from the Physicians for Social Responsibility. Dr. Gwen, you've been working on the connection between commercial reactors and nuclear weapons. What can you tell us about what's going on with the Trump regime and the decimation of the NRC in terms of ongoing weapons proliferation?
I mean, there are a lot of reasons why nuclear energy is a terrible idea, whether it's, cost or delays or the injuries and deaths to miners, whether it's, what happened to Fukushima or Chernobyl, and how many people, we'll never know how many people died, and people who had to flee where they lived, and it will never be safe. There's so many reasons, but I got involved in it in my anti-nuclear work because the proliferative risk, and nuclear energy was, the atoms for peace, and reactors for nuclear power was how my understanding, in correct me from the experts who were here, is that was a pathway for India and Pakistan and North Korea to get nuclear weapons. And with nuclear energy now, the instead of just having 3 to 5% enrichment of uranium, the enrichment has been increased because it's more profitable than, that you don't have to keep renewing. You can last longer with your filling up of the nuclear reactor. The problem is the more you enrich it, the more valuable it is, and the less work there is to make it into bomb grade enriched uranium. And in addition to how hotter the waste is when you put it in the spent fuel pools, and more likely it is to to be a problem with melting down.
Right.
Because if you can't cool it enough to then put it in a cask that doesn't need electricity, then and these are stacked so closely together, the waste in the spent fuel pools, it's just hotter than it was. So and then on top of that, you try to speed up these permitting, and this it takes a long time to get a nuclear power plant online because you're using radioactivity to boil water, and you need a lot of safety
Right.
plans in place. And so if you try to get rid of them to speed it up, we know what's going to happen. It's a disaster. Don't call it an accident, because an accident is something that is not preventable. This is preventable. An accident is something that happens even though everything was in place right. But we know in public health that these are preventable disasters and they're not accidents.
Well, let me mention one thing. I'm going to take us far afield here, but it's important. The Unit 3 at Fukushima had highly enriched fuel in it, and unlike the explosions at Units 1, 2, and 4, Unit 3 had a mushroom cloud. And a lot of people believe that there may have actually been a fission explosion inside Unit 3 as opposed to the other three. And Arnie can speak to that. But I want to take us very quickly now, since you've been raising these kinds of issues, to Ukraine. Because in Ukraine, we have the largest nuclear plant in Europe, the Zaporizhia, with 6 units, and Chernobyl, which is still seething, let's put it that way, which Putin decided to send a drone into. And what we've seen in Ukraine is the incredible vulnerability now of all these atomic reactors in the new era of drone warfare. And it's terrifying. I mean, it would take, well, Arnie, as a nuclear engineer, I don't want to give you any or anybody any ideas. How vulnerable are commercial reactors in their current state to a drone attack?
Oh boy. Yeah, I don't want to give people ideas either. The um, the quickest way to knock out a nuke would be to destroy its transformers. They're unprotected and they sit out in the open and they connect up to the electric grid. And that's something a drone could do almost casually, at the same time to destroy the circulating water system, the service water pumps. If you do those two things, you don't have to attack the robust containment. And I think the containments are pretty robust. But what happened at Fukushima was just those two things. The diesels were inoperable and the cooling water didn't work, and you wind up with explosions. Both of those are not hardened. Both the cooling water systems and the transformers are not hardened. So it's not hard to take a plant offline and to take away its cooling for an extended amount of time. It could happen anywhere, Harvey.
Yes, and now, ironically, and I can barely speak this, I personally support Ukraine. I can't even, there's nothing I can say on this air time that would be passable about Putin. But the bottom line is that the Ukrainians, in the middle of this war, have been talking about building new nuclear plants. It defies sanity. And now they have this huge um, um, controversy, a scandal with people who are taking money from the nuclear power program in Ukraine. It's just mind-boggling to me. Kevin Camps, can you speak to that? And is there an equivalent going on in Michigan with this kind of corruption?
I think we lost Kevin, unfortunately.
Oh, unfortunately, Roger Rappaport, is there anything equivalent to this lunacy, or Ron Leonard, who hasn't spoken yet, in terms of the idea of continuing to build nuclear power plants in the middle of a war?
Well, what's happening in Michigan is the government is 100% behind the Trump plan. So is the entire Michigan legislature, both sides. And the only question is, what military base are they going to build the SMRs on now that the uh, Pentagon is going to be in charge of the siting? As far as the Holtec goes, I think there's a very central question that hasn't been addressed. And I think Dr. Dubois hit on it exactly right, which is that when Trump talks about resuming nuclear testing, he's also talking about the same industry that brought you commercial nuclear power. They're inextricably related. They go hand in hand, and it's all about the money. The problem is, as we've seen with Fukushima, as we saw with Chernobyl, as we saw at 3 Mile Island, which created a lot of orders for nuclear power plants, there's a thing called reputational damage. So the only question is not if, but when something is going to go wrong at Palisades, because by their own analysis and their own study of the tube failures, it's inevitable that this plant, at its best case, will last for 18 months before the refueling outage, at which point they're going to find a lot more cracking, at which point that may be the end of the Palisades experiment. That's the best case scenario. If something happens before that and there's cracking and a radiation release, that story is going to dominate the news for quite some time and is going to have an enormous impact on the future of this industry. It's also going to become a huge political issue in the upcoming campaign because nobody, Harvey, as you keep pointing out, wants to be downwind from any of these reactors regardless. So, for example, at Indian Point, where they did have some radiation leaking because of a steam generator issue, that led to the shutdown of Indian Point. And it's entirely conceivable that in their naivete, they're building a lot of political opposition, despite the fact that they're getting a huge amount of money from this industry.
Right, and the question now is, there also was a radiation release at San Onofre between LA and San Diego. Now, given what has been done to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, if we have a leak at Diablo Canyon, God forbid, and if that radiation starts coming down towards Los Angeles, where I live, God will, what, I can't even barely contain myself. That stuff, will we, given what Trump and Musk and Doge have done to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, will we even know that that stuff has been leaked? Now, okay, I don't have a Geiger counter. I'm going back to LA. I'm going to get a Geiger counter. I'm going to ask everybody, all my neighbors, we're in the valley, to get Geiger counters. But what good is that going to do us if the stuff is leaked out and the NRC is not there to report it? Ron Leonard, do you want to say something?
Let's ask Dr. Dubois that question. She's an expert. What do you think?
And Ron Leonard?
I'm not an expert, but I think there's a great deal to be said for people trying to monitor when they don't think that there's any regulatory agency that's helping them. And the count, it would be gamma rays. So let's see what would be released. I think there'd be a lot of gamma radiation released, so they could, be able to pick it up. But you'd have to have something really organized so that people are checking it every day, a few times a day, whether people in the neighborhood, they take turns. I think that could be done. And if you really think the risk is high, then it should be organized now. I just wanted to say, I've just been back from Chicago where the people organized around the ice raids, and they have whistles, they have networks online, and I think we've reached a time when the public has to, find their own safety in what they can do with their neighbors.
By the way, this is the California Solartopia Show. I'm your host, Harvey Wasserman. We're engineered by Gary Scott and today by Steve Caruso in the virtual studios of KPFK Los Angeles. Our producer is Myla Reeson. The GM at KPFK is Maggie Lepeak. Thank you for your support. And as an Angelino, I live in the Valley. I've got, I'm an old guy. I'm 80. My wife is with me. We have a house, and around the corner is my daughter and my grandchildren, and I am terrified every day by what could happen at Diablo Canyon. And now that we don't have a nuclear regulatory commission, it was never much to begin with, but now that we don't have one we can count on in any way, shape, or form, how are we going to know? God forbid if an accident happens at Diablo Canyon and the radiation comes pouring at us, and we've got a governor's race on. Maybe we ought to start asking this question of the people that are running for governor. Ron Leonard, a godfather of the renewable energy industry. What do you want to chime in with here?
So, as usual, besides our friend Arnie Gunson over there, I learned something when we all get together. And what I learned now is really the important thing that you just brought up. You brought up the essential issue, the bottom line. Are we making a good decision here? Is this a smart move? And what I'm talking about is governmental regulations. As you said, the NRC is sort of clueless. And good news, the EPA is also doing the same thing for fossil fuel and
Right.
coal. And it just makes no sense to go either of these directions when we have a proven source of energy, renewable energy, that can supplant both of these dangerous, stupid ways of producing power and do it more efficiently and doing it at a third the cost. So it's not only are we making a bad decision that's going to hurt ratepayers, we're making a decision that's going to possibly, in the case of nuclear power, focus downwind for hundreds of generations. So let's roll the truck back and think of why we're doing this. What are we getting out of this? And by the way, what's the fastest way to reform the grid system, which is at best only 20% efficient now? So
Yeah, the grid system is
we
a
can
dinosaur.
we can really do this now and less focus in on the solution rather than just the problem.
Well, let's point this out. I was arrested at Diablo Canyon in 1984. Many years before that, I spent 3 lovely nights in the San Luis Obispo County Jail, which I highly recommend, by the way. And Jerry Brown was governor twice. And both times even before he was governor, and we knew him personally, he promised that Diablo Canyon would be dealt with. And in 2018, he engineered, as governor, he's on his way out, a truly masterful master plan to phase out Diablo Canyon and phase in the 100% renewables that Ron Leonard had helped pioneer. And there's absolutely no doubt that California could go 100% renewable very quickly, especially given the huge leaps forward in battery technology. Now, we have a governor's race in California. There's like 100 Democrats running and 2 Republicans. And nobody is dealing with this issue. I want to hear from Jerry Brown, who's still around, when he's going to come forward. He probably thought in 2018 that his promise to shut Diablo Canyon had been finally fulfilled. But in 22, Gavin Newsom came in and betrayed the master plan that he signed on to. California is more capable as the world's 4th largest economy of going 100% renewable than it's ever been. It could do it very quickly, actually. But Gavin Newsom has made some kind of satanic deal with the utility companies. And I want to see if there is a gubernatorial candidate, and maybe some of our listeners can track this down, and gubernatorial candidate willing to take over that plan that was drafted and approved in 2018 and shut these reactors at Diablo Canyon. Because now, after all this other stuff, we saw what happened at San Onofre, but we had a Nuclear Regulatory Commission that intervened. We are not in a position now in this Trump regime to be assured that if there's a major accident and a major radiation release at Diablo Canyon, that we will even know about it. Who's going to tell us with this? I mean, Arnie, you followed Fukushima. You know the insides of nuclear power reactors better than anybody, certainly better than anybody on this call, but better than 99.9% of the people in the world. What are the odds now, given what's been done to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, for the private profit, by the way, of the Trump regime and all the Trump insiders? This isn't happening accidentally. What are the odds that there could be a major accident at Diablo Canyon, and unless people in the area had Geiger counters, that we would never hear about it?
Diablo and Palisades are the two that scare me the most. Diablo because of the earthquake risk, and it's not just the way the ground shakes, but it's the analysis of the way the building moves too. It's a long story. So Diablo scares me. If there's a quake, the probability of an awful radiation release is about 100%. So now what the probability of a quake, you guys always whistle past the graveyard out there in California. So I don't know that. Harvey,
we just had a series of quakes. We just had a series of quakes in Northern California.
Yeah.
Not that far from Diablo Canyon, up to 4 Richter scale. I mean, how do we sleep at night in Los Angeles with that going on?
Well, it's likely that the quake fault lines that they now claim to know about at Diablo were known at the time it was licensed, and they didn't tell the NRC about it. There's a lot of good evidence to show that. But, Harvey, I got to tell you, on San Onofre, the NRC would have let San Onofre start back up were it not for Friends of the Earth, great attorneys, incredible group of activists and public relation firms and experts like me. They put together a team that didn't allow the NRC to do that. But yes, the NRC announced there was a radiation release, but I'm absolutely convinced were it not for Friends of the Earth, the local activists, and the team that FOE put together, it would have started up and it would be running today.
Well, if it didn't blow up in the meantime,
Yeah.
I mean, I do want to take a moment. One of the great activists that helped us at Diablo, at San Onofre, and who made a movie about it, Jim Heddle, with his partner Mary Beth Brangan from Bolinas. Jim has passed away. He was a wonderful guy, a truly great activist who made a real difference in this. So you should see his movie they made with Mary Beth, San Onofre Syndrome. Look it up, San Onofre Syndrome, and look up Jim Heddle. He was a fabulous human being. Dr. Gwen Du Bois from Physicians for Social Responsibility. I think we all have to think in terms of the group in San Luis Obispo, the Mothers for Peace. And I think the idea that we all got to start getting Geiger counters, that's important. There's Jim Heddle. And we also got to dog now and make this an issue in this governor's race. This is the time where we can make a decision in California that will stick if we can get this as an issue in this race for the governor's seat. Dr. Du Bois, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just want to sort of piggyback with Ron Leonard, and again, the link to the climate is what, again, I'm going to plug Mark Jacobson. What he does is he makes it simple that people can understand wind as solar, and I'm just blocking on hydro. So wind, water, and solar, WWS. And then he says, it's the climate, it's the pollution. 7 million people die a year from the pollution. And then number 3, it's security. And so all the issues related to what you're saying, whether it's Zaporizhzhia or, the how do we get the uranium, what risks there are of sabotage and all this. So those 3 simple things, the climate, the pollution deaths, and security. And then you go back to what's happening all around the country. It's certainly in Maryland, is ratepayers are seeing their utility bills go way up. And so, that's where you say, hey, look, we just need that grid to be more robust. We can bring on the solar, we can bring on the wind, we can be bidirectional and all this. We don't need nuclear power. And I think, people can understand these more simple ideas rather than having to understand, the complexity of nuclear power. It's dangerous and we
Right.
don't need it. It takes too long, and your bills are up because of this thing. Look at
Right.
Georgia.
Well, look at what the Vogtle plant did to Georgia, for God's sakes, $35 billion down the tubes, tubes literally. Ron Leonard, as a godfather of the renewable energy industry, what could happen to the rates that utility users pay in California if Diablo Canyon shut and we went to 100% renewable?
Well, two things that are very interesting. When we see temperatures of 110 degrees in California and the entire grid is on shaky ground for failing, if we didn't have this nuclear power plant choking off the renewable energy that is available in those times, we would have much more stability in the grid itself and much less likelihood of having an entire collapse of the grid in California, which we know happened twice. And what pulled that grid out of oblivion was literally rooftop solar. So we have these facts that we can rely on to show us the way forward. We should just follow the science. We should follow our brains. We should follow the solution that makes the most sense and doesn't cost 10 times more than clean energy.
Okay, and with that, we're going to wrap. This has been a come back to us again. This obviously is a theme of the California Solartopia show, which is a series that has been going since 2017 in Los Angeles. Thank you, Maggie Lepeak, the general manager, our producers, Gary Scott and Steve Caruso, our engineers, Gary Scott, Steve Caruso, and our producer, Maya Reeson. Come to us again, support KPFK. We'll see you at the California Solartopia show week after week. This has been incredibly powerful. Thank you, Arnie Gunderson, Roger Rappaport, Ron Leonard, Kevin Camps, and Support the Others for Peace. And everybody, it's time to go out and get your own Geiger counter. I live in the Valley. I'm going to be doing it, and you can contact us, and we'll be back with you. Thanks again, Ron Leonard. No nukes, everybody. We'll see you next week on California Solartopia.
No nukes.
Okay, listen, that was phenomenal. Lynn Feinerman and Don McCann, we've been holding you in abeyance here. We're going to go till 4:20, another 12 minutes. Dr. Du Bois, I forgot to mention you. I'm sorry at the very end, but we'll have you back. And your presence has been greatly appreciated. Lynn Feinerman, then Don McCann, please.
Yes, I wanted to add something to the conversation that hasn't been mentioned at all, and that is that with the resistance of communities to data centers, SMRs, and nuclear renewal, as it were, comes the efforts of corporations, large corporations, to hit up the poorest communities that have no political leverage or power at all. And they are doing precisely that. I heard from Crystal Tubles, who is with Honor the Earth and is part of the Cheyenne, the Northwestern Cheyenne Reservation in Montana, that there is a bid to reopen the coal plant right near the reservation that used to be right near the reservation, and to run that thing with an SMR, a small modular reactor. And this, if it happens, will have to get uranium and all other kinds of poisonous things from mining right there in the region so that it can keep that SMR going. This is a fossil fuel nightmare, and it's really, really bad for the entire reservation. And, we can talk about our troubles, but, when the going gets tough, the tough go after the weakest. And I think we need to be with them and do something about it.
Right. Thank you for that, Lynn. You're 100% right. If you can put the particulars up in the chat, that would be great. And we have to remember now, and this has become increasingly clear, this whole push for AI and these data centers is directly related to the Trump crime family. I mean, these people, this is not some abstract, it's like the nuclear, so-called nuclear renaissance, they say it just kind of pops out of the earth. It's ridiculous. You got a bunch of billionaires who, want to get more money, and they're all tied to Trump. And Trump doesn't hate windmills because he wants to save birds. He's about preserving market share for coal, oil, nukes, and gas. That's what it's all about. So anyway, Don McCann, you want to jump in here? Then Paul Mobley, then Violet.
Yes. We live in South Orange County, right next to San Onofre. And so we're somewhat sensitive to the fact that as they've been shutting down the plant, they have had no place to put the spent fuel rods, nuclear waste, and so on. They have about 3.55 million pounds that they've decided to put in canisters and hold on site temporarily with absolutely no permanent place to take them to, and this earthquake zone. And so we're living on top of this potential hazard forever. And they want to build more nuclear plants. What are they going to do with their nuclear waste if we can't get rid of ours?
Well, if you're that close to the plant, they're obviously going to put it in your backyard, right?
Sure.
And then the rest of it's going straight to Mar-a-Lago. So it's
Right.
basically taken care of.
Right.
Thank you, Don. And get in touch with me in LA, and let's put together a buying group for those Geiger counters. But we got to get into this governor's race. Absolutely essential. Paul Mobley, Paul, and then Vinacali.
I have something to say more so towards Arnie Gunderson. If we go through history and we talk about regulations, nothing changes it more than the science itself. When absorbed dose was only used, we recognized that didn't apply to internal doses. That's when we formulated equivalent dose, right? And this dose has a simple equation, HT sigma R WR DTR. Okay, the WR is the weighting factors. The DT is absorbed dose. R is region, T is time. Okay, this equation has several flaws, especially the weighting factors, especially for internal doses to alpha and beta emitters. A lot of this is based on relative biological effectiveness, and it has this plateau for alpha emitters.
Okay.
That plateaus the dose. So these are issues that need to be spoken about, not just the linear no threshold models, not just hormesis, but the actual equation they're using to formulate your dose and set those regulations.
Right. And the equation that they're using is based on money pouring into the pockets of the people closest to the Trump administration, but regime. But I know what you're talking about, Paul, because if you look up Killing Our Own, which was largely derived from the work of Robert Alvarez, we dealt with doses, and it's bad, bad, bad stuff. And I don't know if you're in California, but you can get to a couple of these gubernatorial candidates. That'd be helpful.
Harvey,
Vina?
Paul
Oh,
Mobley is working intrinsically with Vina and in
Oh, okay,
Piketon
great,
area. And he
Paul.
also has a great radio code dosimeter thing that's new, up to date, got new technology. And I thought maybe talk about that for a second. You were interested in buying a unit. He's got the perfect thing for you, perhaps.
Okay.
It's an inspector. It's a good Geiger counter, but the having a few different options where you can identify what you're getting, what radioactivity you're getting, definitely helps. It's very affordable, and
Put it in the
check out-
chat. Send me the link, and we'll talk about it next week at the Zoom call and at California Solartopia. Okay. Myla Reeson, did you want to jump in? And I think Vina Colley had a hand. we're almost out of time. It's 4:15
Well,
Eastern.
if Vina wants to speak, let's hear from her, and then I just wanted to circle back
Okay,
about
Vina, go
something
ahead.
that
I just wanted to remind everyone that the NRC, for the last 40 years that I've worked on the Piketon site, has never had jurisdiction of the Piketon site on radioactive nuclides. The only one who has jurisdiction is the DOE and the DOD. So NRC is just put out there for a name. At one time, they were all IRDA, and they started switching off their names, so people like me could never get anywhere. But the NRC, to us, has no jurisdiction over radioactive nuclides, let alone small modular reactors.
Thank you for that, Violet, and thank you for that. Got Mila Reese in here. Mila, thank you for your work producing all this stuff, your help, and I hope I mentioned you. I don't remember at the end there, but we're down to 4 minutes.
you did.
This has been an amazing. We still, for God's sakes, have 40 people with us, so keep going there, Mila. 5 more minutes.
So I just wanted to throw something to Arnie, and that was that Don McCann, I think it was Don McCann mentioned that something about spent fuel rods, and it always kind of throws me off because that term is so misleading. And I wonder if you can talk about how it's kind of like linguistic, um, making it seem less serious or less dangerous. If you call it a spent fuel rod, how dangerous are these so-called spent fuel rods?
If the spent fuel rod were in the room with you, um, even if it's 10 years old, you'd be dead in 5 minutes. So it's incredibly radioactive, even after 10 years of radioactive decay. You know, that's one of those words that they use to frame the issue, spent fuel rods. Accidents compared to meltdowns. There's a whole series of those that are either complicated, like Rankine equivalent man, REM, or accidents or things like that. All those words are designed to befuddle the public. So, but a spent fuel, just a single rod as big as my finger in the room you're in now, and you'd be dead in 5 minutes.
Right, and let's look at the so-called spent fuel pools at Fukushima, which by some miracle did not, entirely blow up. I mean, if you read and follow and look at what happened with the spent fuel, those geniuses who put them in pools up in the air, for God's sakes, are these guys completely nuts? The avoidance of an even worse, many orders of magnitude worse radiation release at Fukushima, completely random that we avoided that. It's if you read the accounts, it's terrifying how close they came. Right,
And,
Arnie?
and Don was talking about the spent fuel at San Onofre. And I'm just wondering, can you comment, Arnie, about that inventory of deadly inventory?
It's in stainless steel canisters with maybe a half-inch thick. They're not designed to last forever, and frankly, the government really has no plan to get rid of them and move them somewhere else. So it's really out of sight, out of mind. My personal fear is something called dissimilar metals. The material in the fuel rod is going to break off little pieces. They'll lie on the stainless steel, and there's moisture in there, and it will create a battery and eat its way through the sidewall. But until that happens, there's been a lot of litigation to try to get those things made stronger or get them off site. And the NRC has been resistant on all of it. And the NRC never even looked at terrorism. That's not in their scope of work. So, yeah, it's like I've heard the comment about, it's like building a apartment house and saying, well, we'll install the plumbing in 100 years. That's
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
All right, we're at an end here. We're at 4:20. Steve Caruso, do you want to
Mike,
make a comment?
Mike had his hand up first. Mike, you want to go?
Yeah, I just want to urge everybody to engage your elected officials on a regular basis about how unnecessary and unreasonably dangerous nuclear power is. And it's great that we're educating each other and raising these issues, but unless and until we put this on their radar screen, it will be ignored. And like some of our guests have said, this is a bipartisan problem. Talk to Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and if they won't listen, replace them with somebody who will.
Well, and we've got a governor's race in California, so let's deal with it. Steve, did
Paul,
you want to add something?
Paul Mobley is on the front line down there in Piketon. Just did a video with one of these radio code devices in his car, going around getting readings from the Piketon area. And they have, Paul, they have storage casks there out in the open that you're getting readings from. Is that what I was seeing?
Yeah, a lot of it's bremsstrahlung radiation, basically X-rays with the interaction of the beta particles impacting the high Z material the canister is made of. So yeah, we were probably a couple hundred yards from the over 20,000 canisters there at Piketon.
Yeah, so
Unreal. And with that happy note, remember KPFK in California and LA, we did shut the two reactors at San Onofre. And Jerry Brown promised us that the Apple Canyon was shut. He's still around. We got a governor's race. Let's deal with it. Everybody, we'll see you next week at the Greep Call. This has been fantastic. As always, thank you, Steve Caruso, for engineering. Arnie Gunderson, Kevin Camps, Roger Rappaport, Dr. Du Bois, thank you for joining us. No nukes, everybody. We'll see you next week at number 250.
no nukes, no kooks. Thank you.
No kooks. And Steve, if you can do the blurb you or Mila this time, I'd appreciate it because I am traveling. All right, you guys, no nukes, and meet me in Jamaica when they get the power back on. We'll bring some solar panels there. Ron Leonard will do the installation. And thank you,
Jamaica
Paul
indeed.
Mobley, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. We'll see you next week.